Legal pitfalls when buying property. In this third video of my series of a total of 5 videos on the topic of buying property in Cyprus, I will be discussing common legal issues and pitfalls when purchasing real estate in Cyprus. And I want to say one thing up front, I'm not making this video to scare or shock anyone, but rather to point out real problems. Many of these problems are not uncommon. And if you are not really well advised legally and don't have independent legal counsel, unfortunately, it's not uncommon to fall into such a trap. And then you can lose a lot of money, at best, in quotation marks, just the reservation fee. In the worst case, you've bought a junk property or a property with encumbrances and you could really ruin yourself with it. It's not uncommon for mistakes to be made and for people or property buyers to be deprived of their money as a result. And one a common problem, which is not rare, is the lack of ownership documents, the missing title deeds. Unfortunately, there are many properties, as I already hinted at in a previous video, where the ownership documents are simply missing because the final inspection was not carried out, maybe because fees weren't paid to the authorities, or perhaps because there was shoddy construction work, or the building was made too large. If the construction was done differently than in the plans, too many floors, not enough parking spaces that are too small, rooms that are too small, there are many reasons why the building authority can deny the final inspection or why the inspection appointment never even happens. And if that's the case, you could end up being unlucky and buying a property without a title deed or ownership certificate. As a rule, I would advise against that. There are cases where this can be a bargain, where there are also chances of obtaining the ownership certificate in the future because it's just a triviality, a minor issue that's missing. Such cases do exist as well. We also provide advice on this and give recommendations on whether you should rather stay away or if it's worth it because the purchase price is particularly low. We also have contacts with experts in the field who can assess the property very quickly and cost effectively, who also do such valuations for banks and know the market inside and out. So we also provide support in that area. But as a rule, I say hands off properties without an ownership certificate. That's really more for professionals who are very familiar with the subject. As a one-time buyer or a layperson, I would say you should really steer clear of such properties without an ownership certificate. The second point is hidden mortgages, meaning there are encumbrances on the property. This is of course absolutely essential and must be checked in every case. A corresponding request or inquiry is made to the authorities who then certify whether the property is truly free of encumbrances. This is usually done by our lawyers, but it's all the more important that you know this and as a client can also check up on your lawyer if necessary and know, hey, this is something I need to pay attention to. It's a really important point. This is actually something I've already experienced, not with my own clients, of course, but people have written to me and I've also spoken with people who bought property in Cyprus, signed a purchase contract and even paid the money, but where the lawyer, the attorney, forgot to register the purchase contract. And there are only 6 months' time, so actually enough to register this purchase contract. If you forget to do that, disadvantages will naturally arise. So it's also important here to know and confirm that the purchase contract is really registered. Otherwise, you'll have to deal with the corresponding disadvantages. Then another point, which is actually not that uncommon either, is the value-added tax. Sometimes you read in the property listing or the agent tells you that the VAT has already been paid, that no VAT is due. And then later there's a surprise, namely that suddenly 19% VAT is being demanded. Of course, that's something you want to avoid. So here too, please seek legal advice early on. Check whether the VAT has really been paid, or if you know that no VAT has been paid, am I paying 19% here? Am I paying 5%? Can I benefit here? What are the requirements? These are also extremely important things. That's a different topic. I'll make a separate video about it, but it's important to know, has the VAT, the value added tax, been paid? Yes or no? And then another important point, hidden commissions. Are there hidden commissions between the seller and the agent? While that's rare in the Republic of Cyprus, In the Turkish part, it's actually more common, at least from what I've observed. But for example, that the seller pays the agent additional commissions on top. As a buyer, you might not care about that, but in my opinion, it's something you should check and verify. Because there are also legal regulations here that need to be observed, and of course, every market participant should comply with them. And then another very important point, the special features regarding building regulations. For example, is it a nature reserve? Is it even designated as building land? That's also a common issue. It's not building land, but rather farmland. Of course, the value is completely different in that case. This is not always understood, even by sellers. They don't always point this out to you. Some people still remember the old regulations when you were allowed to build on agricultural land. That's no longer allowed. And that's been the case for several years now. But not everyone is up to date on this, or maybe doesn't tell the truth even though they know better. So it's important to check this. It's also important to check the geological zone, both for plots of land and for finished properties. There are a few cases, it's rare, but there are a few regions in Cyprus where the ground moves, where you have landslides, earth movements, and landslips, and as a result, cracks can appear in the masonry. And in some cases, if you look at Google Maps, you can see that houses have actually shifted over the years. It's incredible. I've really delved deeply into these things myself. It's astonishing. It's so important to keep these things on your radar and to have a network, always having access to a professional like an engineer or a geologist and so on, depending on which region of Cyprus I'm in and what problems might potentially affect the property. So this risk should not be underestimated either. And yes, accordingly, it's important that you seek legal assistance. As I said, I don't want to do too much self-promotion, but this is our daily business, and we support many clients, especially in corporate law, but also in real estate law, and we've been doing so for many years. Over the years and through many cases, we've gained a lot of experience and built up a network of experts, including connections to banks, engineers, architects, appraisers, and so on, which we are, of course, happy to share. We are also happy to provide clients with tips and contacts to make property searches and purchases easier, to help them find the right architect, and so on. So these are things where we are, of course, very happy to provide full and comprehensive support with a particular focus on taxes and law. Thank you for your attention to this very, very important video, at least in my opinion. And please don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel.